Bonjour, Nirjwaitamogan. I'm Amanda Perot reporting for Net News Ledger here in Thunder Bay, sharing you up and close a press conference in Ottawa of waterkeepers who have raised a teepee on unceded territory on Algonquin land called Parliament Hill, bringing concerns on murdered and missing women and men, on child warfare and the Millennium Scoop, and to support our youth who are fasting there, that were greeted by RCMP with handcuffs and trespass orders last night, and grandmothers who are inviting everyone across Turtle Island to begin your own healing journey. This is their sacred words.
Wachik, kakashe hawatin tako sindashin hason, maskwan totem, inanoio skonina, atopis katoke kumagashe sipich doschin, Ottawa magotan dashitashihan, anishnabeo nohat otaskiwao, maganeshta Jocelyn Wabano ayatel nishin hason. Greetings. Miigwech for being here. Thank you for being here. My spirit name is the one who behaves elderly. I'm from the Bear Clan. I'm Inano Cree from Attawapiskat First Nation. I am also Eo Cree from Chisasibi Cree First Nation. I live here in the unceded Anishinaabe territory that the settlers call Ottawa, which we know as Turtle Island. My name is Jocelyn Wabano Ayatel. My family and I are the founders of Wabi's Village, a community of hearts. We speak about the intergenerational child warfare genocide. These are the war conflicts of Indian Residential School, 60 Scoop, Indian Day School, and this current war conflict known as the Modern Indian Residential School called the Millennium Scoop. Our missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls and our missing and murdered Indigenous men and boys have been happening for centuries. It's been happening for the last 524 years since the arrival of the settlers. And so it is important to speak to our entire Dabwewan, our entire truth, and this is our truth. We want to tell our own sacred stories. These are our medicine bundles that we are the holders of. We are the keepers of these bundles. And so knowing this to be our truth and this current crisis that is happening, that's what we are declaring today as medicine bundle holders, that it is our children that we're burying. It is our family members that we're burying. It is our own Turtle Islanders that we're burying. And we're declaring a state of emergency at this time. We are here to say that we want to speak about the web of interconnectedness in all our teachings, that nothing is compartmentalized in our teachings. One of the most important things that I want you to take away today as reporters is when I say inino, it means a human being in my mother's language. When I say eo in my father's language, it means a human being. And that's what I want you to put in your reports today. That is my request, that you recognize me as a human being, because that is the fundamental problem, a crisis situation that we're facing here on Turtle Island, that the settlers don't view us as human beings. We're still fighting for what you take for granted. We're still fighting for that right. Now, we've set up a teepee here as of last night. We are also a part of Unsettling 150, a call to action. And this is why we're declaring the state of crisis in what's happening here and what you know as Canada. That there is a hunt taking place on our Indigenous human beings. They're killing our people. You're killing our children. And our medicine wheel teachings, we honor the eastern doorway, Wabanuk, where our babies and our children live. We honor our youth that live in the south, that Shawanuk, Maganesh the Misue, Nagabe hunach, all the adults of that western doorway, and all our elders of that Kiwetanoch northern doorway. Those are our teachings. We do not discriminate against our men and our boys. This national inquiry that my brother and I and so many of us have fought for has been colonially co-opted. This is not what we fought for. We don't fight to discriminate against our children, to discriminate against our sons and our brothers. Now, we made it very clear as Indigenous knowledge keepers, as ceremonial keepers, as traditional knowledge keepers, as authentic nationhood people, we made it very clear of what we needed. This is about us. This is not about you. You don't come and dictate to us who we are. You don't call us Aboriginal telling us we're not original to these Turtle Islands. You are not original. You're our guests in our homeland. You don't get to tell us how that inquiry is going to look like. It's not your children you're burying. That's white privilege that you've been honored with. It's not you that are dying. We've been dying for 524 years. That's why we're here. This child that grew in sacred water. When we talk about our lands, we are of the lands. When we talk about our sacred waters, we are talking about our life givers that belongs to each and every one of us. Every single one of you here and your children, your relatives, you are water. You are water. We're fighting for you as well. And we're calling on Canada to address the pathology of Columbus syndrome, to address the ACE factor of assimilation, colonization, colonialism, and Europeanization of Turtle Islanders. Somewhere along the way, many Canadian settlers lost their teachings of sacred spirit beings. Because once you know you're a sacred spirit being, you're not capable of dehumanizing us. You're not capable of terrorizing us or discriminating against us. You're going to want to come from a place of love and light. And we're inviting you to start your healing journeys. Miigwech.
Mikanekwana Shankason, Mahekano Dodem. My name is Sophie, and I come from Moose Cree First Nation, and I'm a grandmother. And first of all, I want to outline the needs of every human being. And they are to be seen, to be heard, to be believed and acknowledged, to be heard in trust and good faith, to make our place in the world, to feel safe and secure, to know a safe and loving touch, to know my existence is beneficial. That's what every human being needs. And we can't forget. I'm here because my cousin, Jane Sutherland, passed away 30 years ago. She was found here at the park, Jacques Cartier Park. But I'm not only here for that. I'm here to support my Nietzsche and my other friend, and to support the youth that are here. It's not just about us. It's about the youth that are standing up today. The youth that put that teepee up last night at 3 o'clock in the morning and who stayed in that teepee because they're water protectors and they're going to be fasting there. I stayed awake until 3 o'clock last night with them, and they took good care of me. And that's the way it's supposed to be. They're supposed to take care of us as we intermingle with our youth. And that's what they did. That's the main thing that I wanted to say, is to be acknowledged, to be held in good trust and faith. What we encountered last night was not very pretty. We were bringing in the teepee poles, and the police just came forth and tried to stop us. And I told those men, hold those teepee poles up. Don't let them go. We can't let this go. We can't. We just can't. That teepee is our mother. The skirt of that mother's, that teepee that you see outside there. And we bought that teepee here to help the water protectors while they do their fasting. And we weren't even allowed to put it up until 3 o'clock in the morning. What is wrong with that? We are not a violent people. We don't believe in violence. And right away, we encountered violence. That's the same way our elders and our ancestors were treated by RCMP. I'm going to tell you a story. My grandmother was at a chief's meeting. This was in 1958. She was at a chief's meeting. And at that chief's meeting, the Indian agent and the chief that she wanted the Indian agent and the chief, the other chief, was being ousted out because they were in cahoots, the Indian agent and the chief. And my grandmother knew that was happening. So she went to the chief's meeting. It was held in a barn, Hudson Bay warehouse. And she came in there and she said, this man is not true. You cannot trust this man. And the RCMP came in. The Indian agent told the RCMP, get her out of here. And you know what they did? They dragged her through the Hudson Bay warehouse, and she was hooting and hollering. I was telling a colleague of mine this story. And when I was telling him this story, he said, you know what? He said, I was a 6-year-old boy up in the rafters of that Hudson Bay warehouse, and I was watching her getting dragged out. I said, wow. And I didn't know this guy. And he said, I am a witness to what they did to your grandmother. So this is nothing new, this violence that the RCMP and whoever else is violent. We don't teach our children violence. Our legends are age appropriate. I watched Beauty and the Beast at the drive-in, at the movie theater. Now that is violence. Those fairy tales are not very fun fairy tales. We don't talk to our children. We don't teach our children that. We teach them age-appropriate legends because we care about our youth, because we love them, and we don't want to teach them violence. All I have to say is miigwech.
Now that you've heard from our grandmothers, these are our leaders. These are our leaders of our communities and our young people. It's not about us anymore as Canadian citizens, as Native people. And it's about our children. It's about our young people now. And my name is John Fox. I'm the father of Cheyenne Fox. My daughter was killed in Toronto about 4 years ago. And we've been seeking justice and truth ever since. We've been lied to many times. We've there was supposed to have been a lie detector done, was never done. The Toronto police said that they would do that. They've been at first she was a coroner ruled, or somebody ruled that she died of a suicide, and then there was a second coroner that made a ruling of undetermined right after that. So it's been like this ever since. It's been up and down, and the police have never been truthful to us, and we keep hearing the same story that I went through these 6 or 7 different interviews I've had. I've sat in with the missing and murdered pre-inquiries. I've sat in the pre-inquiries, and I've sat in the gatherings, and the story is always the same, but the same thing what I'm talking about. We have an issue across this country with policing. It's a huge, huge issue. I can't even talk about like how far it goes. We're looking at Starlight Tours, Dudley George, the situations with the Harper in Manitoba who got shot by a police officer, the rape of our women in Val-d'Or, the policing issue in Thunder Bay, the Saskatchewan, Alberta, BC, and out east. This is an epidemic of police wrongdoing. And I, as a family member, and including the people that do follow me, have been trying unsuccessfully to bring the issues of policing into the missing and murder inquiry. The way I see it right now is that the inquiry is not going to happen here because they've excused the police in this country from any wrongdoing. They're not being. It goes as far as to say that the commissioners themselves, along with their representatives, the lawyers, are telling us, Native people, that the police are going to be made accountable. Now, when you look at the terms of reference for that of the missing and murder inquiry, there was nothing like that there. Why are these people lying to us? Just to get us to sign on to that so we can be heard and give away our story? No, we don't want to do that. Last week, it really got on my nerves again. 2 commissioners from the National Missing and Murdered Inquiry, commissioners, were in Montreal, in Kanawaki, protesting at an event to bring about some inquiry. And I think they know who they are. And this is wrong. This is a conflict. This should not be allowed. Why is the families paying for commissioners to go and sit at these events when they got trouble in their own departments of keeping staff, like Tanya Capo, people that are resigning right, left, and center because they don't want to be there? Is such a big mess, that inquiry. How do you expect a person like me and my family or our communities to have any kind of faith in this inquiry when it's such a big, huge mess? Now, when I seen that those commissioners participating in these events, that's not that. Every citizen should be up in arms about that. You should not allow that to happen. And so that's where I'm at with that. And all we ask for is that these young people here are here to make a statement. We have to support them, and our children. Lots of our kids are dying in suicide. There was 3 girls in one angling lake, Wapikika. The third one has just committed suicide. A couple of days ago in Thunder Bay, there was a young man just beaten to death, 25 years old. He died a couple of days ago. Someone beat him to death. And there's like hundreds and hundreds of stories like this. Almost every day we hear this. And that's why our grandmothers here, our Ogichita-Kwe, are taking the leadership role of bringing this into the forefront of Canadian society and our people. Now, we have to take this very seriously because uh, this is life or death for us. So I'm going to let, at this time, let some of the water protectors say a few words. Thank you.
My name is Freddie Stonypoint. I'm from Saginaw, Anishinaabe. I'm currently a student at Carleton University, and I'm one of the lead organizers for reoccupation. So, with reoccupation, what it was uh, a reconceptualization of urban spatiality as Indigenous ancestral land, because the sovereignty of the Canadian state is inherently illegal because it was founded off legal fiction such as Doctrine of Discovery and Terra Nullius. So what we're here to really do is challenge the structure of the Canadian state, because the Canadian state was founded off the bloody expropriation and dispossession of Indigenous land. And as long as these structures remain rooted in those actions, and as long as the consolidation of the Canadian enterprise remains rooted in those ugly truths, Indigenous people are going to be in a constant state of oppression. So it's important to challenge the state paradigm, because as long as the state structure remains in place, there's always going to be necropolitical mechanisms in place against Indigenous people that not only are meant to pacify or control, but are actually meant to kill Indigenous people, because what we're seeing is Indigenous suicide as a manufactured technology of whiteness against Indigenous people. So we're looking at technologies that are being enacted against Indigenous people through, the child welfare industrial complex. We're seeing that materialize through residential schools and the 60s scoop, and we're also seeing sexual abuse materialize geographically. And by geographically, I mean that it spans generations in through physical, temporal, and spatial domains against Indigenous people on our bodies. So what we're here is to really push the envelope towards decolonization, because the legitimacy of the Canadian state was founded off legal fictions, and Indigenous sovereignty, Indigenous jurisdiction precedes any form of European law. So that's what we're here for, because one message we really want to get across is that as long as these structures remain in place, Indigenous people are always going to be in a state of exception, a state of Holocaust-like exception. And because the Canadian state, it's not allowed to function without Indigenous oppression, because Indigenous bodies in this country are a political economy. So what I mean by that is that dead Indigenous bodies are a currency for the further legitimacy of the Canadian state. So what I'm seeing too is a lot of apathy towards our movement, towards, our epistemic activation of our epistemologies and our ontologies, our cosmologies. What we're seeing is alienation. We're seeing marginalization as expressed last night, where the rhetoric of protests and demonstration and rally is always going to be thrown against Indigenous people as a form to recast us as threats. But it's important to note, last night it was none of those things. What it was a peaceful ceremony. So ceremony, it gives us strength. Emile Durkheim, the French sociologist, did studies that prove that social solidarity, the lack of social solidarity, was the root for, the phenomenon of suicide. So when you have legal technologies that are meant to dispossess us, remove us from the land, that is our basis of our epistemologies. That removes our sense of social solidarity, and we're seeing that materialize through these suicides. And so it's important to understand that as long as the consolidation of the Canadian enterprise remains in place, Indigenous people are always going to be in a constant state of subjugation, elimination, and oppression and death. So what we're here to do is challenge the current narrative and get our stories in place, and to really express that as long as the Canadian state remains in place, we're going to have this ongoing form of settler colonialism.
Ani Bojo, Wabanong Nimkikwe, Nadijnikaz, Ganabajing Nadonjiba, Makwado Dem, Anishnabek Kwendao, Nadamoshin Gichimanado, Chimigwech. So my name is Candace Day Neveau, and I'm just here because born being Indigenous, born and being Indigenous in this day and time, is you're born into a legacy, right? We're born into a legacy of abuse, and trying to figure out our way out of that is like really difficult. So that's why we're here today, is to look at what focusing on a solution, right? So we're in a day and time where people know about human rights and equality. So why is it that like we have to forcefully do things for people to listen? So our purpose here is to educate people. We're always educating people on our racism and our oppression, and we have to prove that it's real. And we're here to say that like celebrating Canada 150 is it's difficult for our people because of what we've been through. It's celebrating our pain, and that's why we're here. That's why we set this teepee up to have this ceremony. And it proves that there's a lack of education and awareness, the way the cops were so intimidated by us doing that. It just proves that if Canada's talking about reconciliation, it just proves that like they should know that like we're here in peace and we're not going to hurt anyone. Why is it that there had to be such force against us? And I use my common sense to say like I'm not going to be treated like a fool. I'm not going to sit there and watch Canada Day be celebrated and feel so like ignored, because this is absolutely ignorant. The way Canada is investing so much money into this celebration, it's absolutely disgraceful when there's children out there who have no clean drinking water. Shame on the government for doing that, for completely not considering how we would feel about, this celebration. Like why don't we get that time? Why don't we get that consideration? If we're talking about reconciliation and meeting us at the table, Canada, I heard Ryan McMahon say Canada really missed out on a great opportunity to do something really cool with this 150. We could have in made this celebration like have that inclusive Indigenous voice there, but it wasn't there at all. And why? I understand there are people dancing, but why can we never have Indigenous led spaces? And that inclusiveness needs to happen. Like my elders are saying here, is like all these issues. If you want to alleviate these issues, then we have to have Indigenous led spaces, Indigenous led projects, and center those Indigenous voices. So like I said, being born into this legacy, I take that responsibility for my children, because I'm a mother. I have two sons, and I take that responsibility to make their life easier so that they don't have to do this kind of work. So we're trailblazing. So as an Indigenous mother, I want to honor my ancestors 7 generations behind and 7 generations ahead by giving them a voice now, and saying that the most important thing we can do now is to support the Indigenous people that are pushing, because what we're doing is exerting our inherent right to be here, and that's number one. So that's why we're here, and that's why we're unsettling 150 and reoccupying our Parliament Hill is simply educate and to ask Canadians, to ask the population, to say, have you personally taken time to sit down and listen to what the Indigenous people are saying? As human beings, you know, we want to move forward with integrity. So that's what we need from the population is for people just to like, oh, it's an Indigenous issue, don't listen because it has nothing to do with me, right? We need people to have integrity and take that time to actually like, look at yourself and being like, okay, well, take a couple seconds to like feel it is what we're saying. So that's what we're asking. We're inviting people to stand with us in solidarity today. So Shimigwech.
Right after he's done. As soon as he's done, we can ask.
Ani bonjour. My name is Brendan Nagijik. I come today speaking to you as a son, as an uncle, as a brother, and as a friend. And like Jocelyn said here, that this is a state of emergency and that the problems that we're dealing with are very real and that are still happening. 150 years down the road, we still have to fight to practice our traditions. What we were met with last night was not acceptable. We did not get 10 feet past those gates before two of my fellow friends were arrested and dragged off by fellow RCMP officers. That was something that I had to witness. I stood with my brothers. I stood with my sisters. I stood with my elders. I held on to those poles. We marched with those poles up the road from the Human Rights Monument. And yet we had to fight for our right to practice our own traditions. And I tried to talk with these RCMP officers, and I ended up reciting to them an Article 12, Paragraph 1, that we have the right to practice our ceremonies, to exercise our traditions. And that includes our ceremonial objects, such as this eagle feather, such as our peace pipes, such as that teepee that we fought so hard to erect last night, that we fought for. And we were met with conflict. We did not come to cause harm, to bring conflict or any animosity. And what I saw last night, to see my people standing up and fighting for what is rightfully theirs, what is rightfully ours, was nothing short of tremendous. It takes a lot. It takes a lot of heart. It takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of strength for us as Anishinaabe people to stand up to government, to stand up to this oppression that we have been facing for over 100 years, 100 years too long. And here we are last night fighting as hard as we possibly could just to practice what we should be allowed to do. And today, we come here as unified as we can be. And not just Indigenous people. We had people out there from all different walks of life standing with us, praying with us, supporting us. Our fellow RCMP officers did not support us at all. I tried to ask them questions. They had nothing to say. I was met with silence. Now, is that what we're going to do? We hear about truth and reconciliation. And no one wants to hear the truth and the history of Canada, which is very unfortunate. If we can't get past the truth, we are never going to be able to reach reconciliation. I come here as an Ojibwe Anishinaabe. My grandmother, she was in residential school. She's a residential school survivor. She educated herself for many years. She wrote the curriculum for the Ojibwe language. That woman fought for a long time for her right to even be educated. And what I was met with last night was an atrocity. Not just to my people, but to Canada as a whole. Because that is not who we are. That is not Canadian people. That is not Indigenous people. We came in harmony. We were in harmony with the land before. And now we got to fight twice as hard. And in this day and age, it is unacceptable for us to be putting up with any of that. And this is the time now. We have this open call out. We deal with missing and murdered Indigenous women. Hundreds of unsolved cases. We got young warriors that are dying in foster care that you guys put our kids in. You put our nephews in there, our nieces. And we fight for that. And I'm here today to speak on their behalf. I'm here to speak on behalf of the missing and murdered Indigenous woman. And that's a very real reality for us every single day. You know, Trudeau goes to these reservations. He sees the state that we live in. He sees us living in poverty. He sees us not having clean drinking water, not even being able to buy bottled water so we can, you know, feed it to our kids. And this is what we struggle with. And I'm here today to stand with my brothers, my sisters, my elders, my grandfathers, and say that this is enough. We are here to make a difference. We are here in harmony. We are here in peace. And we are not here to fight. We are not here to be in conflict. We are not here to be in war. We are here to educate and raise awareness. And I come to you and I hope we can make a change. And that's what we're here for today. And that's why we're here this weekend, is to raise that awareness for each and every individual here, and each Anishinaabe here in Canada. We have a voice. You will hear us. And I want to take the time to say thank you to everybody here, to say thank you to everybody that's hearing us and responding. We're here to make change, and we're here in peace and harmony. Miigwech.
No, I just want to have a quick comment. Most of you notice outside there's a big staging area, right? And we see these all the time. I mean, these kind of events. Off to the side, you have a little small teepee. And these are common things.
What a disgrace.
That teepee needs to be moved into the center of this parliament property, which is the property of the Algonquin people, our people. That teepee should not be in a little corner by itself. And that's so disgusting. I mean, look at it. Think about it for a second.
It's barricaded.
Yeah, it's barricaded in. There's cops surrounding the whole place, RCMP everywhere. There's cameras. You got all these cops there watching for these guys here, watching for us. That's what we have to live under every friggin' day. That's disgusting. I just came from there just now. I drove 4 hours to get here this morning to come and speak today. No problem getting here at all whatsoever. That teepee needs to be moved to the center of this here parliament. And so I want to close with that, but we have to honor our people, you know. Just
I do want to add as well. We had an RCMP officer that we were having a dialogue with last night. And one of the things that he pointed out for not having our lodge go up is that there are no churches here on this hill. And what I want you to remember is that long before you arrived here, we did have our lodges here. Our lodges are our churches. All over this landscape of Ottawa alone, and in every town and hamlet and city across Turtle Island, you have your Catholic churches, your Anglican, your Mennonite, your Presbyterian, your Pentecostal, there's synagogues, there's mosques. And I'm going to ask you, what makes you more important than us? Why is it that you're not standing up with us to ensure that what you get to practice without being criminalized, without being demonized, without being terrorized? How is it possible here today, June 2017, in what is an era that is supposed to be truth and reconciliation, where Justin Trudeau is saying the most important relationship is with our Indigenous people, he stated. Correct? Mana? That's what he stated, right? You all heard it over and over again. Apologies that were given to my grandmother, Maganigwabano, right here in 2008 on behalf of all of you. And it was stated and made clear that there is no place for all these injustices, these holistic injustices to continue. But I'm here, and my brothers and sisters and our children are here to tell you we know different. And as journalists, you have responsibilities to tell our truth, our truth. You need to get over yourselves. You're part of the problem. Media are racist as well. You tell our stories from a colonial lens. You lie by omission. There is much white fragility taking place here. Many of us go into sacred ceremony in cases of adversity. We're still standing here because we've had pain and suffering, but it's our ceremonies that sustain us. When we speak about our loved ones taking their lives, our loved ones whose lives are being taken, we are the knowledge keepers. We know what is best of what we need. It's those lodges that are going to save our people. You mark my words. You mark my words. You're going to see a decline in missing and murdered. You're going to see a decline in substance abuse. You're going to see a decline in depression. You're going to see a decline in suicide. The moment that our ceremonies go up, what you get to enjoy on this land with every church and places of worship, we want the same thing. Why is it that we're the last ones to have our ceremonies and our sacred places be respected? It's not acceptable. We're calling on the United Nations and all the embassies of the world to come and step in, because Canada is not in a position to uphold our human rights and our social justice. Canada is dysfunctional. Canada suffers from a loss of sacred spirit being. So those of you humanitarians who still have that heart space of love and justice, many people we have held here fleeing persecution, and yet they've become our persecutors. And many of you, you're standing by and saying nothing. You're no different than the one that's actually abusing us by staying there and standing by idle and silent. And that is not acceptable, because I've stood for you, for your human rights and social justice many a day, knowing very well the consequences are death threats, attempts on my life. Those are Braveheart teachings. I'm not here to make you comfortable. Your lies that Canada has been telling should make you very uncomfortable and ashamed. You should be ashamed of the lies that you're continuing to foster to your children and grandchildren. And so as media people, I'm asking you to stop being racist. You know what? Our stories are being bastardized. We have academics stealing our stories. We have authors stealing our stories. We have white people coming in here and claiming to be Mi'kmaq, claiming to be Innu, claiming to be Anishinaabe, your own white people, saying that it's not acceptable that John Fox be the Anishinaabe. It's not acceptable that Sophie be the Innu. We want to be the quote-unquote Indian. We want to be the ceremonial keepers. That is not your place. The Creator gave you your own teachings. Stay off ours. These are our medicine bundles. And we're asking upon the United Nations to step in, that anybody who bastardizes our sacred spirit beings, our sacred stories, our pipe ceremonies, that you lay charges against them for fraudulently stating that they are us when they're not. We know who our people are. We have a lot of people going around exploiting us, commodifying our sacred stories. They're getting their dissertations off our stories. We are walking dissertations. This is our work. What you see here is our work. We're the ones with Indigenous knowledge, with the PhDs. Go ahead.
Could you explain what the RCMP told you last night the reason for not allowing you to come onto the hill to bring the teepee up, and what has changed since then that allowed you to set it up, and how long they told you could remain set up?
Okay, so it is obviously bureaucracy issues. They wanted to know the size of the teepee poles and that we should have had an application in 6 months ago.
No,
And the thing is just like,
those are not our ways.
those aren't our ways. We don't have to honor the bureaucracy, but also like we're not gonna apply for something we might get shot down for. So it's just like in a lot of ways, like we have to infiltrate that inherent right. So with the RCMP, there was the first they were pushing, right? They were pushing, and we stood our ground. It was until they knew that we weren't going anywhere. So then finally we had to go through the bottoms and like, we want to talk to the guy who's in charge here. So finally we got to talk to Chief James Cook, and we talked, and he finally said, okay, they put the barricade up, and they said, you can set it up here. And it was just like, we regardless, we had made that decision anyway. Without his consent, we were doing it anyway. And like the young people getting thrown, like put off in the tent off to the side and arrested, it really raised that tension. We held them accountable to being, if this is making RCMP look bad because this is a peaceful ceremony, and they really felt that pressure, and we kept laying it on them. So once we started erecting the teepee, that's when it was, okay, this is gonna happen. So it's just that point of like, why do we have to push so hard?
Everybody can get to the beach. Beautiful.